This video has a breaking update on violent tornadoes and violent severe weather in general that's going to be likely with the latest timelines for what's coming as we go into the rest of the weekend. Stick around for all those details right here within the next 10 minutes. Without further ado, I want to start this video by giving you a look at my custom severe weather scale and the forecast for the severe weather that has already been ongoing as of our Friday and is set to continue as we go through the rest of the evening and overnight hours into our Saturday morning. Dangerous storms impacting parts of the Mississippi Valley, especially through the orange and red shaded areas that I've had highlighted. They've already been going on, and we're expected to see more of them continuing east into some parts of the Ohio Valley overnight tonight, as well as round one for parts of the lower Mississippi Valley and deep south before the bigger round that's likely, as I'm about to show you that risk forecast for our Saturday. Here's a look at my most recently made level 0 to level 7 severe scale forecast for our Saturday, and this does include the pre-dawn hours of our early Sunday morning as well, with a life-threatening tornado outbreak expected during that period, especially late into the day Saturday and into our Saturday night. With confidence being a little bit lower towards the Ohio Valley, we could even still see some isolated to scattered and severe weather, including tornadoes there, so be on alert in those zones. Areas from Kentucky and Tennessee back down to Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, and Georgia, though, are going to have the highest potential for the destructive series of supercells and line segments of storms with possibly major life-threatening tornadoes as well as damaging winds and hail that could turn into even a nocturnal event moving east. Places like Georgia and the Carolinas up into the Appalachians getting possible storms even as we go into our late Saturday night into Sunday morning that will need to be watched. Violent tornadoes will be possible, especially where you see the red and pink on screen, so be on the lookout for a very intense day of severe weather Saturday. I cannot stress this enough for especially folks in Louisiana, Arkansas, into parts of Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, as well as the Florida Panhandle. While severe weather doesn't necessarily look as intense as we go into our Sunday, March 16th, through the afternoon into the evening, even after some morning storms that could be on the stronger side in some parts of the Appalachians, the Appalachians and East Coast will be watching for some additional severe storm potential as we go through the day, with linear lines of storms, some of it left over from the night before, some of it forming into new clusters being possible through the day. Some of that activity will have the potential for some isolated tornadoes, so even as we get closer to the mid-Atlantic shorelines and up into places like the Delmarva region, we'll have to watch out for some continued severe weather. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the timing of the outbreak, especially for Saturday and Saturday night. As I'm recording this video, this high-resolution HRRR model has already been doing a great job of timing out the storms that are literally going on right now and look pretty similar to this image it's been projecting throughout the day on screen right here. Therefore, I'm going to be using the rest of this future radar timeline to carry us through the weekend, but by no means should you trust every hour that it's showing a specific storm over your town to be exactly when something hits. Be prepared for general time frames that I will be discussing here as we go through this playthrough. Let's go ahead and jump right into it, starting with what's going to be happening as we go through the overnight hours of tonight. Let's start with around midnight into 1 a.m. into our Saturday morning, with the initial round that we're seeing this evening and overnight already bringing storms up and down the Mississippi Valley. Look at this. Anywhere from parts of Madison, Wisconsin, all the way back down to Mississippi, points in between, watching this generally broken line and some of these clusters of storms that will be following our original low pressure as it pivots up into the Midwest and brings the cold front with it. Up and down this boundary right here, damaging winds, hail, and tornadoes could be possible into the overnight hours, so that's going to be a threat we have to watch. Even back towards Shreveport, Louisiana, wouldn't even rule out some isolated severe weather that could get on that stronger side through the nighttime hours as well as into the early part of our Saturday. I will say these storms look weaker as they get through parts of Indiana, Michigan, eventually into Ohio as we go through the early to mid-morning hours of Saturday, but wouldn't even rule out some isolated severe weather there, and then eventually some new rounds by the time we get later into the day Saturday, so be on the lookout for some of that action. We'll also have heavy rain at the minimum, with some isolated severe weather possible through parts of Tennessee and Kentucky overnight and into our Saturday, and eventually training rain over these zones as a new warm front lifts north with this second low that you can see spinning on up into our Saturday. We could definitely see flooding getting going over the areas of Nashville, Tennessee, up to Louisville, Kentucky, points in between that continue to see training rainfall band after training rainfall band moving on through. I think it's once we get past around mid-morning into the middle of the afternoon on our Saturday when we really begin to see the worst of our severe weather outbreak kicking up out of southeast Arkansas into Louisiana, into Mississippi, parts of southwest Tennessee, as well as parts of western Arkansas. Look at what this HRRR model is indicating. As that secondary warm front lifts north, again, a second boundary with a new low pressure system just helping to enforce the ingredients even more than what the first one has already put in place. It looks like we're going to be seeing storms blowing up over especially this region I'm circling as early as around the morning into the midday time frame, with places like Monroe, Louisiana, over to Jackson, Mississippi, over to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, points northbound to Tupelo, to Florence, Alabama, to Jackson in Tennessee, being impacted by possible supercells that could have all severe hazards, including violent tornadoes as early as the morning getting into the afternoon of Saturday. So you need to be on the lookout for these already by then, and I think things will only ramp up as we go through the rest of the afternoon and begin progressing towards the evening. I think things will be already clearing out through central Louisiana and some parts of Arkansas by the time we get later into the afternoon, but that's when the worst of action will be kicking up, even down towards New Orleans, where we could have at least an isolated tornado threat, stronger supercells north of there through Hattiesburg, Mississippi, up through a lot of eastern Mississippi and west central Alabama, where we're going to possibly be seeing multiple supercells with long track tornadoes moving very near the same locations over and over again. And not only will that training of supercells produce that tornado threat, it could also mean that we get flooding in areas that have tornado warnings, and that could make basements unsafe places for some people as water pours in those zones. So be on the lookout for threats like that as well, and know where you'll go as a secondary backup location if that may apply to you. As we go later through the afternoon and evening here on our Saturday, it does look like storms will continue to be progressing to the east, possibly stretching all the way back down to the Mississippi and Alabama Gulf Coast still around that time frame, with storms especially moving into Alabama, central Tennessee, at least a mass of rain and storms that could have some isolated severe weather and a continued flooding on up into the Ohio Valley as well. Things won't stop there, though. Violent tornadoes could continue to be a threat as we push out of parts of Alabama and even into western Georgia, some parts of southern Tennessee, later into the evening and nighttime here. This model is indicating that maybe back towards Mississippi we could get a final round that could even bring isolated hazards once again into the middle of the night. We'll see if that actually materializes, but I think the main action is going to be going on through eastern Alabama, pushing into Georgia by the time we get past sundown Saturday evening. We'll also be watching possibly some damaging winds, hail, isolated tornadoes pushing into eastern Tennessee, western North Carolina into the overnight. Really a big mess of nasty conditions getting closer to the Appalachians and the Carolinas by the time we get closer to dawn into our Sunday. But look at these storms. You can see back down here, pushing through the panhandle of Florida, southeast Alabama, into southwest Georgia. Some of these structures of storms certainly look supercell-like, even into the overnight hours of our Saturday. So we'll still have to watch at least scattered and possible strong tornadoes moving on through. Even on up here into the western Carolinas, some hefty storms likely some point around or just before dawn into our Sunday if this guidance holds. And then we'll see storms getting closer to the east coast from there as we go through the day Sunday. You can see the Appalachians might help in breaking up some of this action, but even all the way up to West Virginia and southwest Pennsylvania, we could have some stronger storms around a Sunday early morning. Here's what's going to be going on back into the east by the time we go into our Sunday afternoon. Continued lines of storms getting closer to the east coast, and these will continue to probably produce damaging winds, hail, and at least an isolated tornado threat. With that being said, I want to close out this video by giving a general overview of what's going to be going on out of the big picture of the two main low pressure systems driving the weekend system. You can see here, there go your two low pressures. Number one pivoting up into Canada while bringing some wraparound snow into parts of Minnesota as we go through especially the early part of the day into the early part and mid part of the afternoon. Here comes your deep south severe weather outbreak, especially driven by that second low that could also produce widespread flooding in some parts of Kentucky, Tennessee, even back down into some of the same areas that will have supercells late on our Saturday. I've covered some of the specific threats that all of this action will bring in more detail in my most recent live updates here on the channel, so I encourage you to check out the live tab of my channel to see some of that information I provided. I intend to do one more live update on this storm as well as we go into our Saturday morning with a final forecast for the rest of the weekend's severe weather. So make sure you're hitting that subscribe button and turning on all notifications so you never miss a future forecast right here at One Nation Weather. I'll see you next time.